Hey. Hey guys, welcome to this week's. Okay. Hey guys, welcome to this week's Say Yes challenge. This week we're playing Egg Roulette. The objective of the game is to spin the bottle. Whoever it lands on stays, everyone else runs away. Whoever it lands on gets to throw an egg at everyone else who runs away. And that's basically it. Keep submitting your Say Yes challenges.
I promise it's not hard boiled.
Now it's like.
Okay.
I'm gonna get egg on.
Go again. Alright, so none of these eggs are breaking. So if we throw 5 more eggs and none of them break, I'm gonna let them break all of them on my head.
Woo!
Please have good aim, guys.
Oh shoot! That was so awesome! Right in the egg, bro.
It didn't break!
That's me. What? That's so dumb! That was the last egg, and it didn't break. Fine. All right, guys, let's go. All right, guys, so eggs in a crack. So Cece, Amber, and Kristen all get to crack a egg on my hand. Somebody hold my glasses. On my head, not my hand. I don't like it. It's too hot. Have a heat stroke. All right, who's first? Oh God!
At the same time, 1, 2, 3.
All right, guys, don't forget to submit your Say Yes challenges for next week. And I'm gonna go take a shower. Hey, Kristen.
I'm sorry. Okay.
What's going on Friday?
Oh, Friday. There is a movie here. We're watching I Still Believe from 8 to 10:30. That's all I can remember.
What do you need to bring?
A mask.
And
like a chair or something.
yeah.
A blanket. Nailed it.
You lead us to victory every time. It's just what you do, it's just who you are. You lead us to victory every time. It's just what you do and who you are. Yeah. You are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. I am who you say I am. And you crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all. I've tried so hard to see it. Took me so long to believe it, that you choose someone like me to carry your victory. Perfection could never what we don't deserve it. You take the broken things and raise them to glory. You are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you won. I am who you say I am.
Hey guys, we are in the very last week of our series that we've been doing called Big Picture. And throughout this series, we've been taking a look at the life of Joseph. Now, Joseph had a lot of wild and weird and crazy, unbelievable things that happened to him, both good and bad. But all along, God was working toward a bigger picture in his life, the bigger picture that Joseph couldn't see. Now, before we get to the last part of Joseph's story today, let me ask you a question. Have you ever tried to get a little payback on someone? Maybe it was a younger sibling who stole your favorite sweater without asking, or a friend who started a rumor about you, or the guy in your class that always plays pranks on you. I know I have. See, when I was in college, I had this friend who I will not name, but he insisted that he wanted to get into a prank war with me. I cautioned him and told him, man, you do not want to do that. But he did not listen. So the next day, I found myself getting pranked that was just maybe a little bit more than a slight inconvenience for me. But I looked at him and told him, hey, man, you started this. I'm going to end it. I'm going to get my payback on you. So I got a couple of my friends together, and we all worked toward getting him back really well. And so I got some of my friends and somebody from outside the college to put together a care package for him. Now, when you're in college, a care package gets sent to you sometimes by your family or your friends, and it has things like cookies and chips or maybe different supplies to help you survive or have a little bit of a good time at college when you're mostly broke. And inside this care package, I had somebody include chocolate chip cookies. Everybody loves cookies, right? And he definitely did, because he opened up the care package and he sees the cookies, brings them out immediately, and just starts eating all of them in one sitting. Now, I could talk all day about why you shouldn't eat an entire pack of cookies in one sitting, but the issue here was the chocolate in those cookies was actually a chocolate laxative. See, he found out very quick later that day that he definitely lost this battle of pranks against me. And I told him, I said I was going to finish it. And he never once wanted to prank me again. Now, your story might not be just like mine, but I bet you can relate to it. And how do I know that? Well, it's because in big or small ways, we've all been wronged. We've all been hurt, and we've all been frustrated. We've all had someone do something we experienced because of them. And here's the thing. We all have the power to pay back. We not only have the potential to want payback, but we all have the power to actually do it. Sometimes that payback is public. We do something directly and openly to the person who wronged us. Maybe that's confronting them in the hallway for a big fight, or tagging them in a nasty post on social media, or doing something to embarrass them in front of somebody else. That kind of payback is pretty easy to recognize. It's there for the entire world to see, and that's the way that we want it to be. And sometimes the payback is a little more passive, meaning it's a little less obvious and a little more behind the other person's back. Maybe that's spreading a rumor about them, or moving seats away from them at the lunch table, or rolling your eyes every single time that they walk away. Though the other person may not recognize it or feel the consequence of it right away, you're still getting the payback you're looking for in a more subtle way. Or maybe for you, the payback's all in your head. You haven't taken a step to actually do the payback, either publicly or passively, but you think about it all the time. You're constantly setting up scenarios in your mind of how you'd get the payback that you want. And even though you may not actually take the steps to make it happen, it still consumes you. Now listen, I know all of this sounds a little harsh, but we're friends here, right? So can we just be honest with each other and admit that we've all felt this way before? We've all felt that we wanted to get payback, and that feels fair to us. But just because payback might feel fair, it doesn't mean that it is fair. It doesn't mean that it's what's best for us either. In fact, I think there's a better approach we could all take if we put down our power to pay back. Now, if there's anybody who had reasons to wanting payback, it was our guy, Joseph. His story is full of people betraying him, lying about him, and causing him years of pain and suffering that he didn't deserve. To give you a quick recap, Joseph was one of a dozen sons, but his father, Jacob, loved him more than all of his other siblings. Because of that, his brothers got so mad that they threw him into a well and eventually sold him into slavery, where he ended up in Egypt. Then, when he was actually doing a good enough job to where things were working in his favor, the guy who he was working for, Potiphar, his wife actually came on to Joseph. And Joseph was not about to have that and turned her down. So Potiphar's wife made up a story about Joseph that got him thrown in prison. And there he stayed for several years until finally getting released and promoted to work for the Pharaoh. See, that's a lot to take in, right? Now, if I put myself in Joseph's shoes, I can tell you what I would be thinking about constantly throughout the years of going through this. And would probably be thinking a little bit about how I want to get payback on my siblings and all the other people who wronged me throughout all of this. So let's pick up Joseph's story right after he got out of prison and find out exactly what he did. See, at this point, Joseph was doing much better. He had not only been released from prison, but he had actually been elevated to second in command over all of Egypt. Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of the distribution of food throughout the entire Egyptian empire. And that was a big deal because this was during a period of intense famine in the land. The famine, or shortage of food, was so bad that people from far away started making a journey to Egypt to find food so that they wouldn't starve. And Joseph was the guy they were coming to for help. Now, of all the people in all the world, guess who shows up at Joseph's doorstep for food and for help? None other than his brothers. The very same guys who had sold him into slavery years ago. What are the chances? And while Joseph immediately recognized his brothers didn't recognize Joseph. It had been so long that they probably thought that he was dead. And if they didn't think he was dead, they definitely didn't think he would be the guy sitting in front of him with so much power in Egypt. And yet, there stood Joseph in a position of complete power before his brothers. They all needed his help, and they all needed him to save their lives. And in that moment, Joseph had the power to pay back all the wrongs that his brothers had committed against him. He had this chance, this opportunity to get even. This could have been the moment that Joseph was dreaming of, the moment where payback would finally be his. And let's take a look at what Joseph did. Joseph could stand it no longer. There were many people in the room, and he said to his attendants, "Out, all of you." So he was alone with his brothers when he told them who he was. Then he broke down and wept. He wept so loudly the Egyptians could hear him, and word of it quickly carried to Pharaoh's palace. "I am Joseph," he said to his brothers. "Is my father still alive?" But his brothers were speechless. They were stunned to realize that Joseph was standing there in front of them. "Please come closer," he said to them. So they came closer. And he said again, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery in Egypt. But don't be upset and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives. You can live in the region of Goshen, where you can be near me with all of your children and grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and everything you own. I will take care of you there, for there are still 5 years of famine ahead of us. Otherwise, you, your household, and all of your animals will starve." Okay, wait a second. Joseph could have literally done anything he wanted to his brothers. He could have paid them back times 1,000,000 for what they had done to him. He could have left them to starve or snapped his fingers and had them thrown in prison or even killed. That's how much power Joseph had to pay them back. But instead, Joseph took a different path. He chose to forgive. I mean, how amazing is that? Can you imagine how surprised Joseph's brothers must have been? One minute they found out that their brother Joseph was alive, and in the very next, he was embracing them rather than giving them what they deserved. Here's what I think we can learn from this part of Joseph's story. When you can't see the bigger picture, choose to forgive. Joseph's response to his brother gives us a powerful example of how God wants us to deal with the people who've wronged us. We may never know why they did what they did, and they may never apologize for the hurt or embarrassment that they've caused us. There are details of the bigger picture that we will never see or understand, but we still have a choice: forgiveness or payback. We have the power to choose. Think of it this way. If you're in a relationship with another person, a parent, a friend, a sibling, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, really anyone, there's something that connects you to. There's a bridge, but when someone wrongs or hurts you, that bridge suddenly is broken. It becomes shaky, and the connection between the two of you is damaged. Then you're left with a choice. You can either burn the bridge, breaking it down completely by paying back wrong for wrong or hurt for hurt, or you can build a bridge, reestablishing your connection with things like forgiveness, grace, and peace. Of course, I'm not saying you should just keep rebuilding bridges with people who have hurt you deeply and repeatedly. Sometimes the best way to actually choose forgiveness is to set some healthy boundaries or talk about the wrongs done to you with someone who can help. But when it's possible, it's our job to lay down our right to pay back and instead choose to forgive. Joseph could have made the choice to prove a point. He could have fought to be right. He could have chosen to not help his brothers or burn the bridge between them. But instead, he chose to forgive them. And that changed everything. When you can't see the bigger picture, choose to forgive. Now, I'm sure some of you are hearing this and thinking, yeah, that sounds nice, but how can someone actually do that? How can you choose to forgive instead of wanting to get back at somebody? That's a really fair question because, honestly, this stuff is super hard. It's hard to choose to be a bridge builder rather than a bridge burner. And what can make it even harder is when we can't see the bigger picture, when we don't know all the little details or the full story about the situation we're in. So how do we start? Well, number one, start small. Practice extending things like grace, forgiveness, and peace to others in small ways. When a friend teases you and hurts you or hurts your feelings, when a sibling eats the last piece of cake that you'd been saving, or when your parents snap at you for choosing for something that wasn't your fault, practice choosing forgiveness rather than responding with payback. The more you do this in small, everyday, little things, the easier it will be to do when it's bigger things that come your way. Number two, forgive first. Think about your own life for a second. Who has wronged you recently? And see, you don't need to wait for them to come and to apologize to you first to forgive. You don't need to wait for them to make the first move and say sorry for what they've done. The beauty of forgiveness is that you can do it on your own. Right now, you can make a move to forgive first so that you can move on. And number three, pursue forgiveness. We can't always control the way people treat us, but we can control the way that we treat them in response. We can pursue forgiveness. What would it look like for you to forgive someone who has wronged or hurt you this week? Maybe it's an outward step like starting a conversation or inviting them to sit with you again, or unblocking them on social media. Or maybe it's more of an inward step, a prayer you pray in your heart, or a choice you make to not say rude things. whatever it is, take one step this week to pursue forgiveness rather than payback in your relationships. Of course, forgiveness is not always easy, but the good news is we have a God who's the best at forgiving. He's forgiven each and every one of us, and he wants to help us do the same for others. And when we ask for his help forgiving someone, he will always give it. Today, maybe that's where you need to start. Ask God to help you forgive someone who has wronged you so that you can start building a bridge toward forgiveness rather than payback. And remember, when you can't see the bigger picture, choose forgiveness. Let's pray. Papa, I thank you so much for who you are and what you're doing in the lives of every single person listening to this video, God. I just ask that you come into our hearts and that you give us peace and patience in every single situation that we find ourselves in. When people have hurt or wronged us, God, allow us to not be controlled by our anger or rage against this person to pursue payback, but allow us to have a heart like yours, God, and to love and forgive them no matter what the wrong was. In your precious name, amen. Well, hey guys, thank you for joining us again for another week of rStudents Online. And for those of you that are here, I hope that I'll see you this Friday at 8 to 10:30 for our movie night to watch I Still Believe. I'll see you guys next week.
That was beautiful. So now.
I just found our blooper for the end.